Even those who are not particularly interested in karate may, upon hearing the name Miyagi, find themselves associating it with karate in some way. This is largely due to the influence of a certain film and its sequel series. In that story, the name of Chojun Miyagi appears as the ancestor of the master who teaches karate to a young boy. This time, we will explore lesser-known aspects of his life, drawing on the testimonies of his students and the historical context of his era to shed light on his character and trace the course of his life. Goju-Ryu is one of the 4 major karate schools on mainland Japan, and at the same time, it is also counted among the 3 major schools of Okinawan karate. It is an important style, and among the main karate traditions, it is the only one that developed into a large-scale school in both Okinawa and mainland Japan. The founder of Goju-Ryu is Chojun Miyagi. Miyagi was born into a wealthy merchant landowner family in 1888 in Higashimachi, Naha City, Okinawa Prefecture. At the age of 14, he entered the dojo of Kanryo Higaonna, a master of Naha-Te. This was just after he advanced to his 2nd year at Naha Fisheries School. Higaonna established his karate dojo in Naha in 1887. And it is considered one of the oldest independent specialized dojos in Okinawa. After training there for 3 years, Miyagi traveled to Fuzhou, leading a group of migrant laborers engaged in coastal fisheries work in Fujian province. At the time, Miyagi had hoped to travel to Hawaii, but on Higaonna's recommendation, he chose to go to Fuzhou instead. Higaonna himself had spent 15 years, from 1872 to 1887, in Fuzhou and along the Min River coast, where he mastered Southern-style Taizuquan. Having finally encountered a promising disciple in Miyagi some 15 years after opening his dojo, Higaonna may have wished to further cultivate his talent by exposing him, while still young, to the true essence of karate in its place of origin. Fuzhou is also a place with a historical background in which people skilled in interpretation, shipbuilding, and navigation once traveled to the Ryukyu kingdom and settled in Kumimura. At that time, the dominant forms practiced in the Min River basin were Sanchin of the southern Taizuquan lineage. Speaking of Sanchin, Wechi Kanbun, who crossed the sea for training in 1896, is also said to have mainly studied this kata. Miyagi Chojun traveled to Fuzhou in 1904, 8 years after Wechi's journey. His stay lasted about 2 years, which was short compared to the 15 years of Higaonna Kanryo and the 14 years of Uechi. However, while Higaonna and Uechi trained under financially difficult conditions, Miyagi held a salaried position, which likely allowed him to train in a more intensive and concentrated manner. It is not certain whether Miyagi trained at the Kojo dojo in Fuzhou, but the dojo's head, Kojo Kaho, was acquainted with Higaonna, and it is possible that Miyagi visited. Kojo Kaho, as mentioned earlier, was of a lineage whose ancestors had settled in Kumimura after coming from China. He later traveled from Okinawa to Fujian province, mastered Chinese boxing to a level equivalent to full transmission, and became known as a Japanese who opened a martial arts dojo in Fuzhou. His technical system was also distinctive. After delivering continuous striking attacks, he would subdue the opponent using tuite, joint locks and throws. Unlike typical karate, he did not rely heavily on the standard straight punch. Instead, he used techniques such as the one-knuckle fist, bakosa, elbow strikes, palm strikes, and the side of the palm. Moreover, rather than ending with strikes such as punches and kicks as in karate, his system emphasized finishing the opponent by transitioning into tuite to control and decisively neutralize them. According to Kojo Kafu, Goju-Ryu employs a balance of approximately 50-50 between striking techniques, karate style, and grappling techniques, tuite, including joint locks and throws. It is also said that Chojun Miyagi had the opportunity to personally witness the Sanchin of Kanbun Uechi, the founder of Goju-Ryu, one of the three major Okinawan karate schools, who was already considered a master at the time. Notably, Uechi returned to Okinawa in 1910, 4 years later than Miyagi. In 1915, 9 years after returning from Fuzhou, Miyagi's teacher, Kanryo Higaonna, passed away at the age of 63. At just 27 years old, Miyagi became the successor responsible for carrying on the Naha-Te tradition. The following year, a 13-year-old Meitoku Yagi, who would later become honorary chairman of the Okinawa Goju-Kai, entered Miyagi's dojo. Yagi later recalled his impression of Miyagi as having
piercing eyes and a body like a rock.
At that time, Miyagi's instruction focused almost entirely on Sanchin. Rather than practicing entire kata from start to finish, he broke training into detailed components, such as footwork one day and hand techniques another, because he considered Sanchin the most essential foundation. As a result, progress in training was slow. In modern Goju-Ryu, Sanchin is typically performed with closed fists. However, there is also a theory that Kanryo Higaonna practiced Sanchin with open hands, Naha-Te, similar to Goju-Ryu. His movements were said to feature almost no audible breathing, delivering extremely fast spear hand thrusts, with only a sharp, brief exhalation during the pulling hand. In his later years, however, his techniques reportedly became slower and more deliberate. When Chojun Miyagi asked Higaonna about the loud, roaring breathing used in Chinese Sanchin, Higaonna replied, "That is also authentic, and this is also authentic," suggesting that multiple valid approaches exist. When performed correctly, Goju-Ryu Sanchin creates a highly stable stance. One theory suggests that this stance developed to help the seafaring people of the Ryukyu Islands maintain balance while fighting pirates on unstable ships. Through Sanchin training, practitioners are said to develop overall physical abilities such as defensive strength, endurance, concentration, and explosive power.
Practical techniques that can be used in real life.
In 1926, Miyagi, along with Kenwa Mabuni, Choyu Motobu, and Chomo Hanashiro, founded the Okinawa Karate Club. They established a permanent dojo in Naha and worked towards systematizing and promoting karate. In January 1927, Jigoro Kano, a leading figure of the Dai Nippon Butoku Kai and founder of Judo, visited Okinawa. Having developed a strong interest in karate after watching a demonstration by Gichin Funakoshi, Kano observed demonstrations by Miyagi's group, together with Mabuni. Around this time, Miyagi is said to have begun using the term karate-do instead of todi, following the model of judo. Miyagi first traveled to mainland Japan in 1928 with two main objectives. One was to coordinate with the Butoku Kai regarding the conferral of martial arts titles, and the other was to promote karate on the mainland in response to Kano's request in his capacity as a representative of the Okinawa Prefectural Athletic Association and the local Butoku Kai branch. The headquarters of the Butoku Kai was located within the grounds of Heian Shrine in Kyoto, and its large annual demonstrations were held at the Butokuden. During his stay in Kyoto, Miyagi, through the introduction of the Butoku Kai, gave full demonstrations of Naha-Te at Kyoto University and Kansai University. This marked the beginning of more serious efforts to spread karate in mainland Japan. Karate had traditionally been passed down in secrecy, and at the time, it was gradually being forgotten in Okinawa. Few people were willing to learn it, and it faced the risk of disappearing altogether. Concerned by this situation, Miyagi advocated to leading figures in the Okinawan karate community that karate should be promoted on the mainland as a Japanese martial art or physical education discipline. By doing so, he believed its value would be reassessed, helping to restore its status in Okinawa as well. Miyagi gave his first official demonstration at the Butokuden in May 1933. That same year, karate was accepted into the Butoku Kai, initially placed under the Judo division, and in 1934, Karate Jutsu was formally established as an independent division. Through these developments, karate came to be officially recognized as one of Japan's martial arts in both name and substance. In 1934, Chojun Miyagi traveled to Hawaii at the request of the Japanese-language newspaper Yokoku Jihosha. At the time, Hawaii was a region with a large number of immigrants from Okinawa, driven by economic hardship. There were many immigrants from Okinawa. Behind this was the collapse of the Ryukyu Kingdom and its annexation into Japan. The economic system, once sustained through trade with China and Japan, broke down, and Okinawa lost its primary sources of income. In response, the Japanese government promoted sugarcane cultivation, but this over-reliance on a single crop worsened food shortages. People were forced into extreme poverty, at times surviving on detoxified cycad seeds. Heavy taxation, combined with frequent typhoons, further intensified the harsh living conditions. Although Okinawans became Japanese citizens in form, they were not granted the right to vote in national elections, House of Representatives elections, until 1912, 33 years after the annexation of Ryukyu. Many Okinawans who could not find work migrated to Japan's industrial regions, but due to language and cultural differences, they often faced discrimination and struggled to secure stable jobs and housing. Under these conditions, increasing numbers chose to seek opportunities overseas, leading to large waves of emigration. In addition to Hawaii, countries such as Peru and Bolivia became known for large Japanese immigrant populations, of which an estimated 60–70% were said to be from Okinawa. These historical circumstances formed the backdrop for Okinawan migration abroad. When Miyagi was young, his desire to travel to Hawaii, expressed to his teacher Kanryo Higaonna, may have been influenced by the existence of these immigrant communities there. After arriving in Hawaii, Miyagi stayed for about a year, dedicating himself to teaching and spreading Naha-Te. His work can be seen as a pioneering effort in the global dissemination of karate. In 1936, a 13-year-old Eiichi Miyazato, who would later become chairman of the Okinawa Goju-Ryu Karate-Do Association, became Miyagi's student. Miyagi reportedly emphasized that one should not speak casually about practicing karate, and he was strict about personal grooming, instructing students to keep their hair and beards well maintained. That same year, following the enrollment of Miyagi's Okinawan student Jitsue Yogi at Ritsumeikan University, Miyagi began instructing the university's karate research club led by Gogen Yamaguchi, who would later play a central role in spreading Goju-Ryu on mainland Japan. Yamaguchi described his first impression of Miyagi as truly a genuine martial artist, noting that Miyagi's breathing, ibuki, and Sanchin were masterful, reaching the level of a true expert. Yamaguchi also stated that he was deeply moved by Miyagi's words.
Do not be struck by others. Do not strike others. Make peace your foundation.
Among the members of the Karate Research Society led by Yamaguchi was Sonei Chu, who later became Yamaguchi's top disciple and went on to become the direct teacher of Mazoyama, the founder of Kyokushin Kaikan, the largest full-contact karate organization. According to Sonei Chu, free sparring, Jiu Kumite, was devised by Yamaguchi Gogen. Yamaguchi and so persuaded Miyagi to adopt it into training, but Miyagi was initially critical of free sparring, arguing that it would distort the kata. After returning from Hawaii and coming to Kyoto, Miyagi stayed at Yamaguchi's home, and Yamaguchi and So reportedly listened almost every night to his stories about Okinawan karate. Miyagi is said to have traveled from Okinawa to mainland Japan every 2 months to instruct them. These frequent visits to Kyoto continued until around 1942, when the war intensified. According to Shozo Ujita, students from Ritsumeikan and Doshisha universities also visited Okinawa in 1941 and stayed there for several months. In May 1937, Chojun Miyagi, Goju-Ryu, and Yasuhiro Konishi, Shindo Jinen-Ryu, and in July 1939, Sanosuke Ueshima, Kushin-Ryu, were awarded the title of Kyoshi, the highest rank in karate at the time. The year after receiving the Kyoshi title, Miyagi traveled to China for technical research. Visiting Henan Province, home to Shaolin Temple and the birthplace of northern Chinese martial arts, had long been his wish. At the age of 48, he was finally able to fulfill this ambition. However, due to the extremely unstable conditions in mainland China at the time, he was unable to achieve his original objective. Nevertheless, he traveled through Hebei, Shandong, and Jiangsu, where he exchanged techniques with leading members of the Jingwu Athletic Association. As a side note, the Shanghai Jingwu Athletic Association originated from a school founded in 1909 in Shanghai by Huo Yuanjia, though it was later shut down during the Cultural Revolution. At the age of 24, Huo Yuanjia defeated a renowned local fighter, earning recognition from his father and being taught the family's secret Mizongquan style. He also won a public match held on Jing'an Temple Road in Shanghai. Huo was said to wear a Q hairstyle, stood over 170 centimeters tall, and weighed around 90 kilograms. Originally, he was scheduled to face a Western wrestler who had issued an open challenge, but that individual did not appear, and instead Huo fought a Japanese martial artist. Although it is widely believed that he was later poisoned to death by Japanese out of resentment for that victory, the match itself was reportedly friendly and not violent in nature. The poisoning theory became widespread through films and media. However, in the memoir 50 Years of Jingwu Association, 1957, by Chen Gongje, who was involved in founding the Shanghai Jingwu Physical Training School alongside Huo Yuanjia, it is recorded that during a friendly match with a Japanese opponent, the opponent unfortunately injured his arm, and that Huo's condition worsened after taking medicine sold by a Japanese person. Chen also wrote that exchanges with the Japanese were friendly, and that Huo died from a lung-related illness involving coughing up blood. This account is believed to have influenced stories such as Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury. The signboard of the Japanese dojo that appears in the film bears the characters Kito-Ryu. Kito-Ryu is a jujutsu school studied by Jigoro Kano, a central figure of the Dai Nippon Butokukai. The dojo master appearing in the film, Suzuki, somewhat resembles Hiromichi Nakayama, an authority in the Japanese martial arts world comparable to Jigoro Kano. Since the Dai Nippon Butokukai had a branch in Shanghai at the time, it is possible that the dojo depicted in the film was modeled after the Butokukai. However, the story itself is fictional. Returning to the main topic, Miyagi was deeply shocked by the overwhelming power of northern Chinese martial arts. Influenced by this experience, he later created kata such as Tensho and Gekisai. There is also a theory that Tensho was created by Kanryo Higaonna. Miyagi began referring to Naha-Te as Goju-Ryu shortly before the Budokukai demonstration festival of 1935. In other words, The Dai Nippon Butoku-kai issued directives requiring karate practitioners performing at the Butoku Festival to clearly state the name of their martial arts school. This policy also applied to those undergoing title examinations, and it is said that the various school names of karate all emerged starting in the spring of 1935. The name Goju-Ryu was conceived by Chojun Miyagi. It is said to have been taken from the phrase, "The way inhales and exhales hardness and softness," from the 8 precepts of Kempo. Miyagi defined karate as a martial art of unarmed combat, fighting with empty hands without carrying even a small weapon. While weapons may sometimes be used, they are considered merely supplementary. Regarding its origins, his earlier writings state that Goju-Ryu derives from the Fujian school of Chinese Kenpo, Southern Shaolin, Southern Chinese martial arts, explicitly affirming that karate has roots in China. He further argued that Goju-Ryu is the only style whose lineage can be clearly traced back to the Fujian tradition, and in that sense, it is an orthodox and prestigious school. In his 1944 work, Ho-Goju Donto, Miyagi expressed celebration, calling it a matter of great joy, that karate had been recognized by the Dai Nippon Butoku-kai and incorporated into the framework of Japanese martial arts. At the same time, however, he hinted at a somewhat nuanced view regarding the change in writing from To-dei, Chinese hand, to karate, empty hand. That is, considering the possibility that some degree of distortion may have occurred as Fujian boxing, the source of karate, was transmitted to Okinawa. He suggested it might not necessarily be appropriate to retain the character To, China. Miyagi took great pride in Goju-Ryu as a prestigious lineage directly descending from Shaolin boxing. His orientation toward this heritage is also evident from his 3 trips to places such as Fujian and Shanghai in China. From these circumstances, there is a view that Miyagi held Chinese Shaolin martial arts in extremely high regard. Chojun Miyagi passed away in 1953. Before his death, when his senior Okinawan disciple Meitoku Yagi asked him what the true essence of Goju-Ryu was, Chojun Miyagi is said to have replied,
"The fact that I keep repeating the same thing over and over, that itself is the ultimate secret and my final testament."
Goju-Ryu today exists in several organizations, including the Goju-Kai, led by Seizo Ujita, Goju-Kan, founded by Gogen Yamaguchi, Goju Federation, Miyagi-Kei, and Seigo-Kai, Tada Seigo, as well as Okinawan Goju-Ryu. Each pursues its own activities. However, when looking at Japan as a whole, the central force has not been Okinawan Goju-Ryu, but rather the group of alumni from Ritsumeikan University, led by Gogen Yamaguchi. This is not a matter of superiority or inferiority. The Okinawan and mainland Japanese branches of Goju-Ryu simply differ in character. From the end of World War II in 1945 until 1972, Okinawa remained under American control for 27 years. Cars drove on the opposite side of the road from mainland Japan, and the US dollar dominated the economy. Vast areas of civilian land were seized by the US military, forcing residents outside base zones. Under such conditions, Okinawan Goju-Ryu was naturally unable to actively spread to mainland Japan. Meanwhile, due to special procurements from the Korean War and the Vietnam War, mainland Japan experienced rapid economic growth roughly from the mid-1950s to early 1970s. During the Vietnam War, 1965-1973, U.S. military bases in Okinawa functioned as key launch points and rear support bases. From Kadena Air Base, B-52 bombers were deployed to Vietnam on a near-daily basis, and at the northern training area, exercises were conducted in mock villages designed to resemble those in Vietnam. In this way, Okinawa played a role directly connected to the battlefield. At the same time, this situation also brought about economic benefits through special procurement demand related to the bases. However, it is not difficult to imagine the complex feelings experienced by the people of Okinawa. The presence of a military force from a country that had taken many of their compatriots' lives only a few decades earlier, now occupying their land and serving as a base for involvement in another country's war, must have created deep emotional conflict. As Okinawa gradually began to recover tentisically, Goju-Ryu karate on mainland Japan had already been strengthening its organizational structure and introducing competition systems, increasingly taking on the characteristics of a modern sport budo and spreading rapidly. In Okinawan Goju-Ryu, training focuses on learning movement and body mechanics through kata, alongside physical conditioning such as moving while carrying heavy objects and striking hard surfaces with the hands and fists. Sparring is generally limited to pre-arranged kumite, and many dojos do not practice free sparring. On the mainland, while kata training is still practiced, it typically does not receive as much emphasis as in Okinawa. Instead, there is a greater focus on training geared toward competition and practical sparring scenarios. Chojun Miyagi, who developed Kanryo Higa-Onna's Naha-Te into Goju-Ryu, laid the foundation for a tradition that would later branch in two directions. In Okinawa, it evolved as a martial art centered on physical and mental discipline, while on the mainland, it developed along the lines of sport budo and combat sports. In both regions, it grew into a major and influential school.
Japan B is a channel that randomly shares information about lesser-known aspects of Japanese culture, spanning across various genres.